Hey art nerds, today we're taking a look at the Prima Watercolor Confections Pastel Dream Set. So if you're curious about this pastel watercolor set, you're just gonna have to keep watching. So in the past, we've taken a look at other Prima watercolor sets. We've taken a look at their basic set. We've taken a look at their tropical set. I would love to take a look at their Odyssey set in the future. We've also taken a look at pastel watercolors, specifically Chinese watercolors and Japanese watercolors. So I'm really interested to see how these swatch and to see how these handle. Typically, you can make pastels with your watercolors either by adding Chinese white or by limiting how much pigment you add to your water so that you get a lighter color. So there's a few different ways you can make your own pastels and not really any need to buy them. However, I've seen several artists on Instagram using pastel watercolors and they just look so pretty and so sweet. I thought it'd be really fun to give them a try myself. I picked these up on Amazon. It was supposed to be a set of one. The description didn't say anything about sending me two, but they sent me two sets. So I am going to give away the second set. In fact, it's already been given away by the time you're watching this video. I am so sorry, but I am giving it away on my Power Hour art stream on January 25th. So if you like free art supplies, if you like watching me draw, if you like this channel, I highly recommend you join me for my Power Hour streams. I do free character sketches and my wonderful, wonderful art nerds always get first priority. And speaking of art nerds, if you like what I do and you want to help me do more of it, head on over to patreon.com/natosoup and join the art nerd community. It starts at only $2 a month and you get all kinds of goodies like priority for Power Hour sketches, early access to reviews, and access to my backlog of comics. So we're gonna go ahead and move this second set out of the way since we are giving it away and I don't want it to get damaged. We're gonna go ahead and unbox our one Prima Marketing Watercolor Confections Pastel Dream Set. So inside this pastel dream box, there should be a metal palette, like so. And inside of this metal palette, we are going to have 12 watercolors. I paid about $20 on Amazon and I got two sets. I cannot vouch for whether that's standard when buying these on Amazon. In fact, that's my first time with that experience, but they may have switched over to that. And you can find a link in the description below to where you can get your own. These are very similar to the Jane Davenport petite palettes, and if you're interested in watching a couple of those reviews as well, you can check my description as well as my cards. So inside this handy little metal palette, which has a palette ring on the back, so you could use it as a plein air travel palette. Inside this little metal palette, we have one swatch sheet and 12 deliciously wrapped candy colored watercolors. And the colors you're going to receive in this set are, they seem to be numbered rather than labeled. Let's see if I can locate the naming information on here. So this is number 37, brown, 38, chocolate, 39, crimson, 40, rose, 41, lemonade, 42, citrus, 43, bumblebee, 44, sea dream, 45, paradise, 46, pool party, 47, ice sky, and 48, lilac rain. So my next order of business is to go ahead and get these unwrapped. I will unwrap and label the first on camera, and I will unwrap the rest off camera to spare you guys that. And if you're looking for more information about Prima marketing, I talked about them at length in another video, which I will link for you guys in the description below. So this was 37 brown. It already has 37 screened on the side, so I'm just going to write brown on the bottom. And you know what would actually be more helpful than that? To take a pencil and write the color name on the card. So I think that's what I'm going to do for the rest of these. Then I am going to use a piece of washi tape. You can also use double stick tape, or you don't have to tape them in the container at all. I choose to tape them because they choose to rattle. And I'm going to go ahead, double fold it over, and tape my little chocolate bonbon down inside the container. So easy. So I'll see you guys once I've unwrapped the rest. So now we have our delicious pastel palette as well as our not quite so tasty pile of wrappers. Let me get rid of those for you guys. So what are we up to today? What are we doing? We're going to be swatching these. This is, after all, an unbox and swatch. And we're swatching them on Arteza watercolor paper. This is a cellulose paper. Kind of want to see how it handles. And often when I use Prima marketing watercolors, I usually paint on cellulose papers. So that's kind of, it helped me decide how they handle and to give me a better idea of how these little Arteza watercolor sketchbooks are going to handle long-term for me. So I went ahead and I put down 3 lines of waterproof pigment-based ink, and I used a Pintel pigment brush pen for that. Unfortunately, mine has gone for a walk, so I can't show it to you guys, but we are going to do a gradiated swatch, and then we're going to do a mass tone swatch down at the bottom. And I have here a clean cup of water, and I've got a synthetic brush. We're also going to, after we swatch this, we're going to fill in our swatches here. So what I want to do is I want to pre-activate these. I want to give them the best chance at success, the best chance at good swatches. And I'm just dabbing a little water onto each pan, so we can wake up all those pretty pigments. All right, they've had a momento to soak in. So I'm gonna go ahead and begin my swatching. And when I purchased these, I figured these would all be fairly opaque, because the way they made their pastels was not through a light application on the white paper surface, but by adding a white. And if you guys are curious, interested in the pigment information, let me know in the comments below, and I'll try to dig that up for you guys. Although I am fairly certain all of these will include PW6 or PW8. And it's also making my water incredibly chalky, which is another signal that we have loads of white pigment in here. Now, we did indeed buy pastel watercolors, so that's kind of what we thought we were gonna get. So that isn't a complaint, it's just an observation. If you're working with these, you may find it is best to keep your layers kind of limited, because watercolors that include a lot of optical brighteners tend to be prone to lifting and turning muddy on your paper. But perhaps if we use the right paper, which would hold on to the pigments a bit better, that might not be an issue. I'm going to mention again, I have some much longer videos where I talk about Prima marketing watercolors and Jane Davenport watercolors in depth. If you guys would like to see a comparison video of the 2 brands, please do let me know in the comments below. I am happy to oblige, but I'm not going to go into much detail here. This is just a simple unbox and swatch. And if you like these colors and you want to see how they handle, keep an eye out for my field test coming up soon. This palette is also fairly familiar, kind of reminds me of a traditional Japanese or Chinese watercolor palette. Now I'm going to do mass tone swatches. That's where we're working at full saturation down below our gradient swatches. Would not call crimson a crimson. That to me is more of a rose. The rose color is more of a bubblegum, and lemonade would work for that, or a cotton candy. I did think this would come with a pre-mixed peach in it, and citrus is a little bit orange, a little intense to water down to a peach. But the two browns would both make really cute skin tones. And this does seem like a fun, playful palette, perhaps for artists who are able to work in fewer layers. So I look forward to doing the field test. I'm going to try to emulate that style. I was so inspired by some of the artists I've seen use this palette over on Instagram. All right, those are our mass tone swatches. Just gonna point out, looks like we've got a cup of chocolate milk here. I'm going to move these over to the side to dry, which shouldn't take too long. I have my heater cranked up to full blast. It is a snowy, cold day today. What I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to do a bit of a wash. So we get full strength, and then we get how it will look when it's washed out. Because brown, for example, is actually much more yellow ochre. Chocolate is kind of a, it's almost a burnt sienna, but it loses some of that color clarity that some burnt siennas have. Crimson is really more of a pink. To be honest, I'm a little surprised they didn't include a white with this. So far, which is your favorite color in the Pastel Dreams set? Kind of puts me in mind of like a very playful baby circus, one of those mobiles. I've always been partial to those colors like crimson. Now, as I apply color, palette is definitely getting a little bit chalky. Sort of like painting with sweet tarts. Although the color application is good, you're really picking up a lot on your brush. These are not necessarily a little goes a long way watercolors. These, if you use them pretty consistently, I can see that you would go through them quickly. Now, last I checked, you could buy open stock colors on the Prima marketing website, which I will link in the description below. And since these have their color numbers marked, screened on the bodies, that makes reordering much easier. Now I'm going to give this a chance to dry. This isn't really watercolor paper so much as it is a textured stock, and it doesn't really take the water that well. While this is still wet, I also noticed there's a fair amount of sedimentation in these paints. I did work pretty thickly, and a lot of that sort of granulation transferred onto the paper as kind of grit. Like they handle kind of gritty. All right, so I have finished swatching. The Arteza swatches all dried. There's a little bit of a texture to them, so you can definitely tell they're putting down a deposit of something. I will do a lift test a little bit later on just to see how prone these are to picking up. Now, something I noticed when I was swatching these, particularly when I was swatching here, is, and I don't want to touch these because these are still a little damp, they actually leave some sediment. If you'll look closely at these paints, and I've mentioned this in prior Prima videos, they're a little bit gritty. And I think that's something that's well worth noting if you want a very flat, smooth sort of fill. These may not be able to deliver what you're looking for, but you know, we're only going to be able to find that out when we put these to the field test. So I'm going to let these finish drying and then we're going to do the lift test, but all of the colors are fairly saturated. The pastels in this set do indeed deliver pastel color. If you are looking for a watercolor version of gouache, just get gouache. I mean, yes, you can use these sort of like gouache. There's a bit of a resist In fact, I'm actually going to grab an alcohol marker because these didn't really work the way I wanted them to. So with alcohol markers, they are not water soluble. They're not going to reactivate with water, and it's not going to create a resist like the pigment did. So I'm going to zoom in really quick and just kind of re-swatch them because I'm not necessarily getting the information I need. And I'm doing full saturation swatches, so we are doing mass tone swatches, and I'm probably not going to be able to get every color, but I'm hoping I'll get enough information for this to be a worthwhile test. So I asked y'all earlier in the video, what is your favorite color in this set so far? And I think I answered that my favorite, that I'm always a little bit biased towards rosy colors like crimson. I really want to say I also like the light blues, but they're so reminiscent of the colors that you can get with Marie's Chinese watercolors, and that's going to cost about the same and probably be a little bit easier to find. And you're going to be able to get more out of it because they come in tubes. So you're getting a larger amount of paint. It's hard for me to say, you know, these colors that are so similar to the Marie's because you could just get them in the Marie set. In fact, if you guys are interested, I can actually do a swatch off where I swatch these compared to the Marie's watercolors, specifically the Chinese watercolors, not the Western watercolors, and we can just see how similar the two sets of watercolors are. Since these watercolors are so opaque, I thought it'd be really fun to swatch them on black paper. Now, this isn't black watercolor paper. This is just Canson color line black paper, so it's just regular drawing paper. But it'll give us a good idea how these might handle on perhaps colored watercolor papers, toned watercolor papers. So they've dried out a little bit. I'm going to go ahead and reactivate them. Give that a moment to soak in. All right, so we're gonna start with mass tone swatches here at the top. And I'll zoom in so you guys can see what I'm doing. And I'm really trying to work as though I were working with a dried gouache like fan color. So I am trying to work at full saturation, hence mass tone. So that is all 12 colors swatched. While those dry, I'm going to go ahead, turn it over, try not to make a mess, and do some gradiated swatches. Just to see when it starts to lose its color. Now, something I've noticed about this black color line paper is it seems to perhaps be dye-based and the black isn't fixed. So this isn't necessarily something you would really want to use for watercolor illustrations anyway. But there are black printmaking papers available. There are black cotton rag papers available. They tend to be a bit more expensive because that's another step in the process. And yeah, they would dye that. Although I've heard with black Reeves, I want to say, they actually use wool from black sheep, is what I was told. Maybe they were pulling my leg. In the past, I've also swatched hydrocolor watercolors on these just to kind of see how well the sparkle stood out on the black paper. So I have used these with watercolors before, but mostly just for swatching. If you are interested in this paper though, I have a couple of videos from around Christmas where I demonstrated how to use Posca markers on this paper to paint a Christmas tree and a wreath. So I am going to give these a chance to dry now. All right, so our pastel dreams are just about dry. As you guys can see, they do show up on black paper. They are not as opaque as gouache would be. Even at full strength, they're still not really gouache, so you can use them as sort of a faux gouache or for maybe a very nice opaque flat wash, but they're not going to have full opacity on black paper. So my watercolors are all nice and dry. I want to show you guys my chocolate milk that I made from cleaning my brush off in between swatches. That's a lot of optical brighteners there. And if you guys don't know what I mean when I talk about optical brighteners, I've got a blog post for you. You can find it here on the card. So we're going to take a look at our dried paints, specifically at our re-swatches. Now, I don't know what on earth is going on here, but it looks like it picked up some of the blue, which should just not be possible, but yeah, I don't even know. Maybe there was a chemical reaction. But you can see all of these colors are fairly opaque over this bright and vivid blue. It's a little bit harder to see here with the black swatches because you can see there's a little bit of a resist in some areas. So if you are looking for very opaque pastel watercolors, these are very opaque pastel watercolors. The card dried as well. You can see it's pretty warped. Like I mentioned earlier, this isn't even cardstock. I don't know what this is, but it's a very thin paper with a little bit of a watercolor, not even much of a watercolor texture embossed on it. So you may prefer to create your own map on your own paper, but you guys can see some of the granulation there. And then these are the paints themselves, of course. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a lift test, and then we're going to kind of just discuss our final verdict, and I'll see you guys off. So I'm going to go switch my water out to something that isn't chocolate milk and be right back. Now it is time for the lift test. So I have a flat synthetic watercolor brush, a clean cup of water, and some paper towels to help me do my lifting. I have a feeling these are just going to lift right off the paper. Part of that is because this is a cellulose-based paper, and pigments, paints tend to sit on top of cellulose papers rather than soaking into the fibers. And part of it is this has so many optical brighteners on it, or in it rather, and those tend to be very prone to lifting as well. So some colors were surprisingly not as lifting as I thought, and maybe I just can't tell because they're much lighter. Rose, Paradise, Pool Party, and Icy are less lifting than I thought they would be, as is Citrus and Bumblebee. A little more resistant, whereas Brown, Chocolate, Crimson, and wow, I can't read that. I think it says Lilac Rain. Sorry about that. Those are all fairly lifting. They tend to sit on the surface of the paper. So if you guys want to see me re-swatch these on a cotton rag paper, please let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, I'm satisfied with what this has to show me. So I want to thank you guys so much for joining me today for our unbox and swatch of the Prima Marketing Watercolor Confections Pastel Dream Set. And just another reminder, I gave away my second set during my Hour of Power Hour art supply stream where I proselytize art supplies. If you want to see your character drawn or you want a portrait drawn, I do free sketch commissions. And if you are an art nerd, if you are part of my art nerd community, you get first crack at those sketch commissions. So you can head on over to patreon.com/natosoup, join the art nerd community, help me do what I'm doing here, and get to enjoy requests and sketch requests over during the Power of Our Power. The power hour, sorry. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you're looking for more watercolor goodness, stick around. My channel is full of it, from tutorials to unbox and swatches to reviews to lists of wonderful watercolor supplies. If you want even more, if you're looking for a deep dive into watercolor comics, head on over to natosoup.blogspot.com and check out my watercolor basics series. If you like my art and you aren't reading my comic, you can read it for free at 7inchcara.com and 7inchcara.tumblr.com. Your support over there, reading my comic, commenting on my comic, and sharing it with your friends means the world to me. So thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. I sure enjoyed hanging out with you guys today, and I hope to see you guys again really soon. Bye, guys.